Welcome back. You're watching India Today's coverage of the budget, and we are trying to make sense of what the union budget holds for the economy with the fine print a few hours after the announcement of the budget. And Jayant Sinha, Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance and former Minister of State of Finance for Finance, joins me now. Mr. Sinha, thanks for joining in. I was just talking to Subhash Garg, and his point is that while optically it looks like we've got a 2 lakh crore boost on Capex, 5.5 lakh crores going up to 7.5 lakh crores. That includes things like a 1 lakh crore interest-free loan to state governments who are constrained by their own fiscal deficits at 4% and therefore should not be construed as additional Capex support. Would you concur with that?
No, I would not concur with that, Udayan, because the reality is that the terms under which these loans have been extended are very, very concessional. They're 50-year loans at a very low interest rate, and they're designed to support the priorities of the state governments as well as those of the national government. And they will provide a very strong incentive for state governments to invest in Capex and in projects. And the whole idea behind this budget is to drive job creation through kickstarting further the virtuous growth cycle related to investment. So you'll see throughout the budget, there are all kinds of incentives to drive investment. And this is another one which is very important.
Which brings us to the issue of execution, because in past years, including this year, we've had outlays on Capex at the center and the state level. But by the end of the year, we find a lot of cash still residing in RBI's coffers because the money has not been spent. Do you think this year will be any different in terms of the government being able to spend the money? Because without just earmarking it does not help. You have to spend the entire amount for it to have that multiplier effect you're talking about.
Udayan, this year, as you can see in the revised estimates, the Capex expenditure is actually higher than was originally projected in the budget estimates. So it's not as if the government cannot spend the money. The government can absolutely spend the money. And there are many areas where Capex is sorely needed. For example, in terms of highways, where we've spent 65,000 crores this year, this financial year, and next year we're going to double that to 1.3 lakh crores. So this money is being spent. We look at Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, again, the money is being spent. And once the money flows out as Capex, it helps, of course, larger companies, but in particular, it helps MSMEs, particularly if this is government money coming, because that has security of payments. And as the Honorable Finance Minister announced in the budget today, government payments will be paid within 10 days. So it really gets, the lifeblood of the economy really pumping hard and enables, very fast growth as a result of that.
One understands what the government is trying to do by trying to create jobs, invest in infrastructure. But at the same time, all of us agree that the bottom end of the pyramid is looking very, very difficult. And in that sense, one would have expected that some of the welfare schemes continue, the schemes which get money into the hands of people at the bottom end, that would continue. In moving money out of revenue expenditure and into capital expenditure, do you think that the government is being too hasty? Because income repair is also important after 2 years of the kind of distress that one has seen. But we are not seeing that in this current budget.
Udayan, I'll have to disagree with that analysis, because remember that during the COVID pandemic, we have had a very elevated level of welfare spending. 80 crore people have been getting virtually free food grains for 19 months. We have spent some 2.6 lakh crores on providing those food grains. Now, that's going to come down a little bit, but other subsidies like fertilizer subsidies, Kisan Samman Nidhi, which is the direct payment to farmers, fertilizer subsidy, all of these are going to continue. So while we are not going to have spending quite as high as it was during the COVID pandemic, it's still going to be welfare spending at very, very high levels. And when this happens, you are pumping consumption resources into the economy, into the hands of people who are most capable of spending it and who most need to spend it. So to say that there's not enough welfare spending happening, that support is being withdrawn as far as welfare is concerned, is absolutely the wrong analysis. As I said, during the COVID pandemic, this was at very elevated levels, and it's still going to be at very high levels going forward.
Is it the government's assessment then that the COVID-related scarring has abated? Because looking at the budget, it feels that way, that from those elevated levels of welfare spending or support, the government is coming back, dialing back a bit. Is it the government's assessment that the worst is over and those people don't need as much support as last year?
It's not just the government's analysis here, Udayan. I think the world is realizing that we're getting, God willing, towards the end of this pandemic. And because our vaccination levels are as high as they are, 90% of people have got one dose, 70% of people have got two doses, booster shots are being rolled out. We have many good therapeutic alternatives to deal with the COVID pandemic. We are now getting to the point where we can resume normal activity, resume normal economic activity, and everybody wants to get back to work. Everybody wants to get back to a normal life. And as a result of that, normal economic activity will start, and the level of elevated welfare spending will not need to be as high because normal economic activity is being restored.
The other criticism which can be leveled in an otherwise good budget is that the government is probably making it difficult for the Reserve Bank of India with its gross market borrowing program of 14.95 lakh crores, net borrowing program of more than 11 lakh crores. Already today we have seen the bond market reacting with yields going up. Do you think this budget in a sense could be inflationary and could lead to yields moving up in the system, which is not very desirable?
I actually think the budget is going to be disinflationary, Udayan, because of the tremendous push that we are making as far as infrastructure is concerned and as far as manufacturing is concerned. There's a huge investment on the supply side. So a lot of the supply side bottlenecks that we're talking about, the supply chain issues that we're talking about, I think we'll be able to address those quite well through the steps that have been taken in the budget. It is entirely true that when you run budget deficits at the level that we are running at right now, at 6.8%, 6.9%, now 6.4%, obviously there will be pressure in terms of borrowings. That's a given, and that's true for all governments in the world because we are going through a once-in-a-century pandemic that is going to require elevated levels of borrowing. But we have a fiscal glide path. We are bringing it down, as the Honorable Finance Minister has said, down to 4%, and gradually all of these things will get sorted out. But the most important thing, Udayan, and I will re-emphasize that, the most important thing is we have to restore strong medium-term growth. We have to grow at 7-8% in the medium term. And the best way of doing that is through investments. And that's what this budget is emphasizing. It's being very fiscally prudent, very conservative, and it's emphasizing investments with high multiplier effects on the economy that will really lead to fast and robust growth going forward.
Well, one area which has surprised a lot of people is the scaling down of the disinvestment target, Mr. Sinha, because, we are at 65,000 crores, down from 1,75,000 crores last year, which was not met, of course. Now, one way to look at it is that market conditions are difficult, government is not able to push through disinvestments, and therefore it's kept a conservative estimate. The other way to look at it could be that there might be a rethink that the government is saying, we probably don't want to go so aggressive on privatization any longer. So is there a fear of that, or what could explain this very diluted target for the current year?
The main reason I think why the numbers have come down is because we don't know yet exactly what valuation LIC will go out at. The expectation, of course, is, as the Honorable Finance Minister said, that LIC will be transacted in this financial year. That will result in some revenue accrual. And then in the next financial year, once LIC is through, we have a few other, opportunities. We have BPCL and so on, but we don't know exactly what valuation that they will get in the markets. And therefore, it's better and more prudent to be conservative with your disinvestment numbers, which is what I think these estimates reflect.
Okay, before I get Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw into this discussion to respond to some of what you're saying, one last question. We were speaking about cryptocurrencies just a few days ago on this channel, you and I. While the bill has not come through, we've got a 30% taxation, which is, raised the hackles of a lot of people who invest and trade in that market. They're saying it's unfair and it should be much lower, in line with equity taxation. What are your thoughts on the level at which it has been pegged, the 1% TDS? It almost seems like the government is saying, okay, we'll allow it, but we are not encouraging it. There seems to be that kind of an element to the taxation which has been proposed.
Well, as far as digital assets are concerned, there were two very substantial steps that were undertaken. One was the announcement of the fact that RBI is going to be coming out with a digital rupee with a guaranteed value, which of course the RBI can provide. And the other is that we've created a taxation framework so that crypto assets can be brought into the tax net, that they will be done in a very transparent way. They'll be assessed. The 1% TDS is there so that we can assess what is the price that you bought it for, what is the price that you sold it for. And so we are creating a legal and transparent framework for bringing these assets into the taxation framework. And by doing so, we are establishing predictability and stability as far as crypto assets are concerned. And we will see how this progresses, number one. And number two, we will also see globally what is the kind of regulatory regime that gets created for crypto assets. And on the basis of that, I'm sure there'll be further fine-tuning of this entire taxation framework.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Sinha. I appreciate you joining in on a very busy day for you, surely. Thank you.